Jesse Owens, an aspiring sprinter, plans to attend Ohio State University despite having financial issues due to his father's unemployment. Before leaving for this new venture, he meets with his girlfriend Ruth, who's working at a salon, and their daughter Gloria to say goodbye to them and assure Ruth that he will come back soon to marry her. At the university, as Jesse begins to pursue his passion for racing, he catches the eye of track and field coach Larry Snyder. After calling him into his office, Snyder admires his natural talent, but urges him to work on his form and technique so he can be a strong contender for the upcoming 1936 Berlin Olympics. As soon as Jesse showcases his performance in the following day, he instantly impresses Snyder, who thinks Jesse will bring the next gold medal for him. Meanwhile, the U.S. Olympics Committee is currently in talks about boycotting the Games due to Nazi Germany's discriminative policies, because they're not only restricting Jewish players, but also have some reservations for African American athletes. Although many members are in favor of this decision, Avery Brundage still wants the U.S. squad to participate, so he's given the responsibility to fly to Germany and sort things out with the officials. At the university, Jesse continues to train while also getting a job at a service station to support his family financially. As it is hard for him to continue his training due to his long working hours, the situation becomes unacceptable to Snyder. He scolds him for not keeping up with the schedule, but finds out that Jesse has a daughter to support, so he decides to find Jesse another job. After a while, Avery arrives in Germany, where he learns that despite ongoing financial uncertainty, the Olympic preparations are in full swing, as the government is planning to use the event to promote its propaganda. On his visit to Berlin Sports Center, Avery meets German filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl, who is appointed to cover the games, and a higher official, Josef Goebbels, whose ministry is given the responsibility to monitor the entire event. Avery threatens to pull the U.S. squad from the games, but changes his decision after Josef assures him that their policies won't concern the athletes and they'll also stop promoting racialism in the press. Meanwhile, Snyder, who wants Jesse to concentrate on his training, gets him a no-show job to resolve his financial issues and orders him to reassume his practices the next day. Jesse comes to the ground with high aims, but the situation is not that easy as he continues to get distracted after facing racial comments from a fellow white athlete. After the session concludes, Snyder expresses his anger with Jesse for not giving his 100% and advises him not to pay attention to his surroundings. A few days later, while having a party with his friends, Jesse faces a minor mishap, but Snyder, who's not ready to give him the time off, urges him to get back on the field soon. Jesse later participates in a state-level game in Michigan, where he breaks many records in sprinting and broad jump. At the end of the day, Jesse celebrates his victory with Snyder, who motivates him to do even better, as he still has a long way to go. Upon returning to the university, Jesse receives a warm welcome from the media and the other fellow students, due to his amazing performance at the event. Later on, he continues his winning streak, while also enjoying his time with his friends at college. One night, as they party at a club, a woman named Quincella, impressed by Jesse's newly found fame, approaches him, and both instantly hit it off. At the same time, Josef offers a new business deal to Avery, asking for his help in building the new embassy in Washington in exchange for his assurance of accepting his demands for the Berlin Olympics. Avery finalizes the deal with Josef, while Jesse and Quincella attend the 4th of July celebration together. The following morning, he learns that Ruth is planning to sue him for his betrayal. The situation gets on his nerves as he cannot keep his focus, and loses a race against another leading athlete, Ulysse Peacock. Frustrated with his defeat, Snyder demands an explanation and advises him to be careful about his new relationship, as he thinks this might cost him a lot on the ground. Jesse eventually breaks up with Quincella before they drive back to the university, and asks Snyder's permission to go patch things up with Ruth. Upon returning home, he visits Ruth at her salon, while trying to clarify his position and apologizing for his recent cheating. Although she refuses to listen to anything, he spends the entire day waiting outside until she accepts his apology. They rekindle their relationship and quickly get married before Jesse's return to the university. A few weeks later, the U.S. Olympics Committee gather for another session, where it votes in favor of participating in the upcoming sports event. The decision received an overwhelming response from Avery, whose efforts have finally proved fruitful. At the same time, Snyder, who's been anxiously waiting for the decision, expresses his excitement, thinking Jesse will be able to bring a gold medal home now. Meanwhile, Davis, a representative from the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, visits Jesse at his house, congratulating him for his recent victories, but asking him not to participate in the upcoming Olympic Games due to their political differences with the Nazi regime. Seeing him conflicted, Jesse's father tells him if he does not go, it won't make a difference, but if he decides otherwise and wins a medal, it will always be remembered in history. The next morning, Jesse meets Snyder to inform him about Davis's proposal. Before he can speak anything, he gets double-minded after seeing the entire staff upset about the US boxing athlete's defeat against a German player, and Snyder hoping Jesse will be able to beat them on their home ground. Still, he hesitantly discusses the entire situation with Snyder, saying his participation will mean he approves of Nazi propaganda. Snyder tries to convince him to go by saying if he does not participate, he'll regret it for the rest of his life. As Jesse disagrees, there's a heated argument between the two, but they still cannot come up with the conclusion as he storms out. Disappointed with Jesse trying to throw away his once-in-a-lifetime chance, Snyder spends the night drinking, but has an accident resulting in a fracture. The next morning, he again approaches Jesse, confessing that he should have tried to understand his concerns, although Snyder accepts he's still unaware of the kind of pressure Jesse is facing at the moment. But he still does not want him to throw away this opportunity. As Jesse remains firm on his decision, Snyder convinces him to at least participate in trials to get qualified to keep his options open. On his request, Jesse joins the trials and qualifies for 3 events, including 100 and 200 meter sprints, as well as the broad jumps. Although an achievement for Jesse, Snyder has a setback, as he's not allowed to accompany him to the Olympics because the committee reveals he's not on the panel of registered officials. Meanwhile, Peacock meets Jesse in private and convinces him to go by saying there are a lot of people counting on him, so he must take this chance to do something for them. Confused, Jesse also discusses his concerns with Ruth, but she assures him of her support whatever he decides. After spending days thinking, he eventually decides to go and gets ready to leave for Berlin. On their way, he's surprised to see Snyder, who's made his way into the ship to support Jesse during the event. As the games finally begin with a promising opening ceremony, Lenny shoots the event and gets an admiring response from Yosef. After a while, Jesse starts practicing by turning on the music in the background, but it upsets the head coach Dean Cromwell, who does not approve of his methods and orders him to stop. After the session, as Jesse tells Snyder about his arguments with Dean, he asks him to apologize, but Jesse declines. Dean interrupts the discussion by revealing that Snyder is not a registered trainer for the Olympics, but as Jesse insists, he agrees to get a special pass for him. After he leaves, Jesse confesses that he made up the entire thing just to get Snyder back on board. Snyder then arranges special new shows for Jesse before his 100-meter race and helps him get ready, while Avery wishes him all the best and motivates him to bring in a gold medal for his country. With passion in his eyes, Jesse steps inside the stadium and is awestruck by the sight of thousands of spectators cheering for their favorite players. He still manages to keep his focus and win his first gold medal in the 100-meter sprint with a record time of 10.3 seconds. After Snyder congratulates him for the victory, Avery joins them and takes Jesse with him to meet Adolf Hitler, but learns he's already left to avoid traffic. Frustrated with his actions, Avery tells Yosef that Führer should either congratulate all players or none, but Yosef reveals he'll never shake hands with an African-American player like Jesse. The following day, as Jesse intends to take part in the broad jump, a German player, Karl Lutzlong, shows supportive behavior toward him during his practices. In his initial attempts, Jesse makes 2 fouls, but makes a comeback and eventually qualifies for the finals. Jesse and Lutzlong face each other again in the finals, where Lutz makes a new European record by jumping 7.87 meters, but Jesse instantly breaks it in the next attempt by jumping 7.94 meters. On his final attempt, Lutz makes a foul, which gives Jesse an upper hand, and he wins his second gold medal in the Olympics. Lutz still insists on him going for his 3rd attempt, so everyone in the crowd can enjoy his brilliant performance. Jesse accepts and sets another record by jumping 8.06 meters. Lutz once again shows great sportsmanship spirit by congratulating him on his win and offering him to take a lap of honor together. But his attitude upsets the officials, who think of it as a defiance against their policies. Later, Jesse shows up at Lutz's door with bottles of beers as a thank you gift and spend the night talking to each other. Lutz opens up about his disapproval of the government's discriminative policies. When Jesse points out that his over-supportive attitude toward him might get him into trouble, Lutz reveals he only did it to prove them wrong. As the conversation ends, he also wishes all the best for Jesse's upcoming 200-meter races. As everyone wonders if Jesse can bag another medal, Lenny learns that Yosef has ordered not to film the event, but she ignores it and requests her crew to go ahead with filming. Once again, Jesse proves himself, winning a 3rd gold medal and making making everyone proud of his superb performances. His wins are not well received by the German camp, as Hitler once again leaves the ground without congratulating him. As the day concludes, Leni expresses her displeasure with Josef for trying to stop her crew from shooting, as she believes they cannot change the results of the game by doing so. Avery joins the discussion, but Josef forces him to not let the US Jewish player participate in the 400-meter relay race. Although Avery refuses, he is forced to comply as Josef threatens to make their business arrangement public. On Avery's orders, it's announced that there will be a change in the lineup, and two Jewish players, Marty and Sam, won't be taking part in the event. Although Sam and Marty protest against their decision, their complaints remain unheard. Jesse and another player, Ralph, are asked to replace them, but Jesse leaves the meeting by saying he will only do so if Sam and Marty approve. Upset with the unjust behavior, Jesse and Snyder have another emotional discussion, where Snyder reveals that despite his passion for the games, he could not participate due to an airplane accident at the last moment. Snyder tells him that he had his shot, but threw it away without knowing its importance, so he does not want Jesse to do the same mistake. Later that night, Sam and Marty meet Jesse in his room and tell him to go and win, so their sacrifice won't go unnoticed. At the final day, as the relay race begins, Jesse makes a quick start, setting the tone for his entire team. The US team wins the competition with a new world record of 39.8 seconds. Overwhelmed, Jesse thanks Snyder for his unconditional support throughout, and also offers a gold medal to him to honor his efforts. Leni visits Jesse to request him to help her shoot his winning broad jump, which she plans to use in her next upcoming film, so people will never forget his record-breaking performance. A few years later, the situation in Nazi Germany gets worse, as they invade Poland and begin the Second World War in 1939. Due to Karl Lutz's resistance to the government policies, he enlists in the army and is sent to the front lines. Despite all the difficulties, he still remained close friends with Jesse until he got killed during the war. The postscript tells us that upon returning to the US, Jesse received a heartwarming welcome from thousands of citizens. Avery Brundage did not manage to survive the business deal scandal, but became the president of the International Olympics Committee, the position he held until his death in 1975. Larry Snyder continued his coaching at the Ohio State University with the same enthusiasm. His trainees went on to set 14 world records and win 8 Olympic gold medals. As for Jesse, he remained married to Ruth for the rest of his life, and they had 3 daughters. In his professional career, he brought 4 gold medals to the United States, but continued to face racial discrimination at various points in his life, as he was often denied using the same service as his white fellow athletes. Although he was a hero and an inspiration to many, his efforts were never recognized at the government level. In 1990, 10 years after his death, he was awarded a Congressional Gold Medal in posthumous recognition for being an Olympic hero. If you enjoyed that recap, I got a good feeling that you'll like this one too. Click on the video on your screen for more.